But she reaches in, she pulls out the more expensive, indulgent snack. And she says, "This is for mom." I said, "Oh, do the kids ever get to try it?" No. And all of a sudden, we discovered that this new moment, a moment that was just mom's. It was not the indulgent snacks that she shares with the kids. It was not something that was in the common space, and it was not something that she was consciously aware of. It was something that existed in another space that was just hers. And if we had not done that ethnographic work, we would not necessarily have captured that she gets her own moment.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Dig Inspiration episode. I am so pleased today because I had the honor of talking with Amy Baer from Bell a couple of weeks ago, and she raised some really interesting points around the value of ethnographic research. She talked about her experiences in working for companies that are France-based companies. And so I thought, who better at Dig to come and join me to talk about that episode than Julien Naggar? He's SVP of Client Partnerships in France. So you're the best guy to talk to me today, Julien. Thank you.
Hi, Jess, or should I say bonjour?
Yes.
How's it going?
It's good. Sprinkle in as much French as you can throughout the episode. Okay? Promise?
Sounds great. I have my plate of frog's legs over here just to add,
Perfect. So one of the things that Amy talked about that I thought was such a rich place for us to start is the value of ethnographic research. And, she shared the sort of case study or her experience at Bell. But it's interesting in my observation, I'm curious if you share this observation, that ethnographic or in-home research is often one of the first things to get cut when budgets tighten. However, it surfaces some of the most critical insights, something that surveys, for example, never could. So how do clients or do you make the business case for protecting that type of qualitative observational work, especially in the environment where we're so data obsessed?
Yeah, and as a former qualitative researcher, I love that Amy was an advocate for qual, for ethnography, for that foundational piece. And there's so many ways to kind of advocate for it because it is so crucial. But I think the best way, Jess, is let me ask you, what's in your pantry right now?
In my pantry.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. A lot of noodles, a lot of broth is probably stocked up there, a few different snacks probably, and a lot of condiments. That's probably my pantry vibe.
How sure are you of knowing everything that's in that pantry?
No. I mean, there's definitely broth. That one I can
Okay.
stand behind for sure. But
Yeah.
but no. And I have 2 teenagers. Who the heck knows what's still in there?
And what did you have for lunch 2 Tuesdays ago?
2 Tuesdays
Yeah,
ago.
yeah.
Can I
Two,
check my
two, two
calendar?
Tuesdays ago. I don't know what I ate for lunch yesterday, and I'm
Yeah.
sure you don't know what you had
No
for
idea.
lunch.
No
Yeah, and
idea.
that's the point, right? We are poor narrators of our own reality. We have bad recall. We're bad at self-reporting. We want to represent ourselves in better light. So maybe that broth is a organic, healthy broth because you really love caring for your teenagers. But in reality, if I were to open that pantry, it's the cheapest one you found. And that's sort of the point, that consumers don't necessarily relay to us exactly the precisions of their experience. And the result is that we miss things. We get pieces of misrepresented information, and that ends up forming the foundation of our understanding. That ends up forming the inputs that go into our survey. And it's not a good foundation to get to an innovative idea or the right decision. I think the best way to concretize that, and what you can potentially miss by not doing ethnography, is an example of some ethnographic fieldwork we did a year ago. So we went out into people's homes, and the goal was to really understand indulgence. We were building out a indulgent platform for a CPG brand that wanted to really understand this space and make something, innovate on a new product that could really. So it was really exciting. They wanted to start at the grassroots, understand what is indulgence, how do people engage in indulgent moments, and what kind of sensorial experience, but also experiential and emotional experience should define that indulgent moment. So we want to do a bunch of houses, which is always just a wild thing. You never really
Right.
know what you're going to get. And we go into one home, and this was a lower income, smaller apartment where it was the kind of place where, the kids are in charge. We also did a pre-interview for this. So this person had said, "Oh yeah, we keep all of our indulgent snacks in this one place." We went to her home. We said, "Let's get a tour of your indulgent snacks." And she brings us to the place, and she pulls out all the Halloween candies that she always has on stock all year round because that's the best thing to give a treat to the kids. And we get a tour to all different places. We see the whole house. Where do you eat the snack? What is an indulgent moment? What time of day is it? And
Mhm.
I asked her, like, so is that everywhere? Is that everything? And she said, with a kind of like a little bit of a smile, like a little bit of a, well, no, I actually have one more place. And so it was like above the pantry to the right, kind of hidden away, very inaccessible to anyone in the household. Her kids wouldn't be able to access it. Her husband would not be able to access it. Slash, I don't think he even knew where anything was in that kitchen. She gets a moment to herself after a busy day of shuttling the kids around, doing all the groceries, doing all the cooking. I know this is like such a stereotypical narration, but like this was her reality. And she's working a
Mhm.
full-time job on top of that. And she still reserves a place in the corner for her. And what are the ingredient sensorial elements that embody that moment that's just for her? So we were able to capture that. And if you were a competitor in that space, guess what? If you didn't do the ethnography, you missed it. You missed the foundation. And if you are building on a shaky foundation, your house is not going to be able to withstand the changes that are presented to it.
Well said. But here is the fatal flaw in that lady's plan, okay,
Yeah.
having it up this top shelf,
Yeah.
is all of a sudden one year your kids are taller than you and they can reach and get to places that you never thought. And that's where this exact thing happens in our house. We have a little place we try to squirrel away. Our Ghirardelli is our brand. That's our special brand. And Ella finds it. And all of a sudden we're like, who ate all the Ghirardelli? And turns
Yeah.
out it's your 16-year-old. So word to the wise for that mom out there. You got to find some new and innovative places to hide things.
And then we just found some more demand spaces out of that.
Look at us with our research puns. So, one of the things that surfaced from what Amy shared is this whole idea of if you don't question the value of actually being in home with consumers and those insights that you can glean in those scenarios and situations, what about the role of AI and technology, which is giving us these crazy efficiencies and scale, but maybe without the depth that you would get from in homes? So, what do you think about that balance between those two things? And I'm curious if your thinking has shifted, especially in the last even 6 to 9 months.
Yeah. I mean, everything's changing, right? When I first was exposed to some of these AI tools, AI interviewer, AI moderators, I went through the 7 stages of grief. I was like, no, no, that's not displacing us. What are you talking about? And then all the way to like, oh my God, I'm going to be out of a job. What am I going to do? And now I've kind of come full circle around it as these tools have sort of evolved and their place has become more clear and their utility has become more clear. And where we're at right now and what I'm hearing from our clients is it's not an either or. It's a where does it fit best? Where
Mhm.
is the AI needed? Where is the human needed? And where are they both needed together? So there is a place for the traditional qual. There is a place for AI. And I think what makes Dig unique is it's not just those two components. It's also amplifying, say, an ethnographic piece of research with a trends or signal based research to try to understand, okay, we heard this from one person. What is the broader discourse happening? It's not just qual versus trends or versus AI. It's now we got to measure this. Now we got to pull in all these multi source elements of information, cross reference against the emotional truth, and actually take all of that knowledge and data and mess and turn it into a story that actually influences decisions. And this is
Mhm.
actually something that Dig does really well. We've got all of those kind of multi source elements, and we've got that storytelling ability not only built into our culture, but built into our platform. So I think, my initial fear is now met with excitement. Like, how do we bring everything together and actually start influencing change, influencing decisions in an ever evolving landscape?
Well, that's a wonderful journey that you shared. Your journey of being quite the skeptic to now a bit of a believer and hopefully harnessing the power of it to make your craft even stronger. So that's a good place to be. I'm glad you worked through your grief. It's healthy. So let's talk France because it was fun to hear from Amy some of the inspiration that she gets from the France market and some of the nuances of working for French organizations. And, French brands carry a lot of prestige around the world, but what
Mhm.
resonates in France doesn't always translate everywhere else, of course. So I'm curious, you work with some of, the most significant French companies out there. What do you see as the biggest challenges those companies are facing right now? And where do you think some of the biggest opportunities are?
So when I speak to our French clients, I see a lot of the same challenges that we see globally. But as Amy framed it, just with more macaron.
Nice. Nailed it.
Great joke, right? Okay. There's just a ton of pressure to transform the insights function and to do so quickly. We've seen across organizations budget cuts, reorgs, just every team having to do more with less, which in itself isn't a new story. It's the same thing every year. But combined with that, you're also seeing a requirement to transform the insights professional skill set. We're no longer data aggregators. We are decision influencers. We are advisors. We are storytellers. We are here to move the needle and move it quickly. Again, this isn't necessarily a France specific story. It's a global story. I think what's unique to France is that there's a lot of deliberation, a lot of conversation, a lot of discussion of kind of the philosophical ramifications of some of these tools and how to use them or not and when
Mm.
to use them. So there's a lot of opportunity too. You know, Amy is a strategic advisor. Amy gets to influence decisions. Our clients get to start being at the table to actually bring empathy to leads in the organization and be advocates and not just query response tools. We're not just there to say, of course we have this information. We're here to influence decisions.
What are some of the nuances of the French consumers that impact what insights professionals think about for innovation, et cetera? Can you just share some local nugget?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it changes across categories, but there's just different expectations around, for example, human connection and the desire to say, you know, bonjour every time you greet someone, merci every time you leave. So there's kind of a formality around the rules of engagement, and that sort of slows things down. It means you are going to be in more lines at the grocery store because there's again more requirement of the rules of interaction. Another thing that really impacts consumers' lives, and I know everybody everywhere is always in a hurry. We're doing stuff from our car. We're trying to squeeze everything in, but in France, you know, the work days are often pretty long days, and you're not necessarily doing all of your groceries. And now I'm thinking specifically of Paris, right? You're not doing all your groceries at the beginning of the week. You might be doing your groceries every day after work. So all of a sudden, your long work day that might start a little after 9 and go till 7, and then you're kind of rushing home. You're grabbing your bread, your baguette, you're grabbing any other food you might need, and then you're making dinner, and it's already 8 p.m. And so you can think about how the French consumer has to automate a lot of things to account for all this extra time devoted to social graces and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And it impacts so many aspects of how brands can meet consumers where they are and be empathetic to that reality of time.
Yeah. And then, you know, culturally, there's also this huge emphasis on sustainability. It's not just culture, it's the state mandating it. It's companies towing the line and having targets around sustainability. And so that kind of piece of it becomes part of every conversation. It's not a question of do I recycle or not? It's, you know, which bin is taken out which day, and it becomes part of the social fabric. So that's kind of a more recent development.
Well, and I thought, Julian, this could be a fun opportunity for me to turn the final dig on you, like I do our guests, and ask you a couple of these impromptu questions, which, if you've heard an episode, they're not really impromptu anymore for you. But here we go. What was the last product you bought on impulse in your last trip to Paris?
It's funny, at the beginning of our conversation, I asked you to recall the last thing you ate, and now you're asking me to recall an impulse decision. Honestly, it was probably chocolate. It was chocolate. It was
Oh,
100% chocolate. You can't walk by the chocolate shops in Paris without walking in and spending way too much money, but it's worth it. I say it's for my family, but when half the box is empty by the time I get home, probably maybe mostly for me.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that can't lie. Well, then you might have the same answer for this next question, but what's a category or a brand you could rationalize any price point for in the French market? You just have to have it.
Yeah, it's still chocolate. Sorry, can't let it go. But
Well,
I
let's
promise for the next question, it won't be a food related purchase. Okay.
okay, well, let's do it. So what's a French brand that you would date and a French brand that you would marry? And it's up to you if they're the same brand or not.
I mean, you interviewed Amy,
Mhm.
right? She works at Bell. It is very hard not to marry Baby Bell. It is a perfect, and I'm not a big cheese guy, but I
Mm,
have an 18-month-old whose new favorite word is cheese, and it's very cute. But if I'm, you know, 15 blocks from home and he says cheese, I gotta have something in that bag. And like, what better spouse than something that takes care of my child, right?
that's perfect. So you're marrying Baby Bell. I don't disagree with this at all. You might have heard me really espouse my household obsession with Baby Bell. It's a thing.
It's a thing.
Um, is there a brand that's a different brand that you would date?
So in Paris, there's this retail, well, it's a grocery chain called Biocoop. And it's basically a normal grocery store, but everything's like organic, but it's like French organic. So you've got the nicest soap and the best cheese, and there's just,
Right.
it has this very curated feel to it while still feeling a little bit granola. And you know that anything you buy there is going to be great.
Yeah, that sounds like a wonderful courtship. I support it. Well, thank you for bringing your expertise from a qualitative ethnographic standpoint and also just the knowledge of the French market. It's been a fun conversation to bring those two topics together.
Been a pleasure, Jess. Always great to talk to you.
Bonjour.
Au revoir.
You mean it's not,
It's not the same.
not the same?
Like what you heard? Share the inspiration or head to diginsights.com to learn more about what we do.